Hello and welcome to For Your Journey. On this month's episode, we're going to be talking about Passiontide. That is a term that we have heard a little bit over the last year or so. It's a term we're hearing more and more, and it's specifically about this season that we're just starting right now at the end of February here. So we wanted to talk about what does it mean? What does Passiontide mean? Why draw attention to it now? What is it? What can you tell us of Passiontide?
Actually, we already have spoken about it for some time, and last year we even had a vision article about it. It's a Christian understanding that the 40 days before Easter, there's a time, it's 40 days minus the Sundays actually, that we begin to prepare for Easter and in contemplation of the Passion of Christ. Mm-hmm. It's a little paralleled to the 40 days that he was in the time of temptation prior to beginning his work. Mm-hmm.
And then what is the responsibility of a believer in that time? Is there responsibility, or is it just acknowledging, we're on the final 40 days here before Easter?
No, I think we should really make a conscious effort to, in preparing for Easter, to think about the suffering of Christ, and that we really withdraw even from our normality of life to say in some things we're going to do something different. Christ fasted during that time. Mm-hmm. So the idea of fasting, not only maybe with regards to foods or so on, but just withdrawing from some things just to show that we love Christ, and we begin to have at least a little feeling of his suffering. Mm-hmm. For myself, it's difficult to fast for a day of food, and he fasted 40 days. I can't even imagine it. Mm-hmm. So, but to withdraw from some things, to think more about, what has the Lord done for me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, similar to how there's kind of a preparation period before Christmas. We have Advent is kind of the season leading up to this celebration of Christmas, of mm-hmm. Christ's arrival, his birth, and now we're trying to take the same focus leading up to this preparation, or preparing to leading up to the celebration of his victory, of his resurrection. And it's not necessarily something that's specific to our church. A lot of churches, other denominations,
generally,
it's called usually Lent, or a Lenten season. Mm-hmm. Is kind of what it's referred to. And different denominations may even have a couple different days here or there within that. We're acknowledging this Wednesday for this year, February 26th, as the start of our Passiontide, mm-hmm. leading up to that. And focusing on Christ's suffering, how in this time of focusing on his suffering would you not become overly saddened by it? Is that one of the goals of it? By focusing for 40 days on just suffering and Christ's sacrifice, is there a not a tension? Is there just something to be aware of? Because usually with Christmas, you're focusing on the joy and the happiness and the love of the season and all these wonderful things, which are great. If now the focus of these 40 days before Easter is all suffering, is it intended to be like a downer?
No, but it's a season that should be really considerably different than Advent. Mm. As you just described Advent, the season of Passiontide should be meditative. Mm. It should be still. It's good for us to do that. We are caught up in a world today that is so full of influences and busyness and so many things, and that's good for us. It actually deepens us when we can set aside some things and say, but I need to do this for myself. I want to prepare myself and have certain feelings towards the Lord, that especially as we approach Palm Sunday, but even more importantly, Good Friday, that it's a somber moment for us. I'm not saying it's, as you said, grieving and sorrowful, but it's meditative and reflective would be mm-hmm. better words, I think, to use.
Mm-hmm. Okay, no, that's good. Meditative and reflective. Things to meditate and reflect on are Scripture, right?
Yes,
any time, but especially when it's focusing on Christ and his suffering. And there's a verse I'd like to highlight out of 1 Peter. And it's the 4th chapter of 1 Peter, verse 13, saying, "But rejoice to the extent that you partake of Christ's sufferings, that when his glory is revealed, you may also be glad with exceeding joy." And maybe you can bring some clarity to that. What does it mean to partake in Christ's sufferings, or to share in his sufferings?
Well, okay, in one sense, we can never suffer as he did. But the idea to give up things or to say, actually, Passiontide's a nice time to begin a new discipline, a new approach of making time for meditation, of perhaps, if we're not praying as we should, to pray more and get into some kind of way of doing that. I think that would be a fundamental thing that we could do at this time.
Yeah, because we're also, in order to enhance our understanding and celebration of his victory, we have to understand we went through to earn that victory, right? And it's about bringing attention and what that victory and his resurrection means for us personally, too. You know, that we have a personal tie to it.
Last year at Passiontide, the services sort of led to it and showed different events that were happening prior to him coming to Jerusalem. And that was an interesting study as well, to see what kind of things, and having the feeling he knows this is going to happen. And so what must that have been like for him, you know, to just try to connect and be closer to Christ in this time. And I'm convinced if somebody does that, the celebration of Easter becomes so much higher then.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. And we thank you for joining us on this episode of For Your Journey. We wish you a contemplative and a meditative season as we approach the celebration of Christ's death and his resurrection and victory. This has been For Your Journey.